As a legal entrepreneur, I just couldn't get over how great the name of this next panel would have been as a law firm. Kang, King, Keller, and Pickett. Unfortunately, King and Pickett didn't come, so it's just Kang and Keller. So it's kk.com. Come on up. And you know, panelists are lawyers too, so I think I'm going to sit in on this one because I'm also a lawyer. So I'm Steve Massour. I am a partner at MGA, which is a sort of full-service law firm with big roots in the entertainment business. We represent Run the Jewels and a few other big bands, and also have been in the internet space for about 30 years. And so this Web3 space is super exciting for us. And I'm excited to talk about our topic. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Woo, it works. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. It's so exciting to see this conversation and the star power in the conference, in the audience, and also what we've seen on these stages. And so I think this will be a fun topic. I think when we first got it, I looked at it and I said, well, it's basically the entire topic of the entire conference, but we're going to talk about it in 20 minutes. So it's going to be fun. So my name is Catherine Keller. I am a lawyer, a securities lawyer for a long time, number of years, also in funds and for public companies here in the United States, at law firms and in-house. And then I was in the government for a number of years as well. Right now, I'm focusing on helping, consulting with some crypto companies as they're navigating this space, particularly in the traditional the melding of traditional and new innovative technologies in the space, as well as...
What were you doing in the government?
I was Deputy General Counsel of the Department of Commerce, and I also served in the White House. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And so, thank you. And so, and I'm also a Senior Advisor to the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream. And what I love about that, especially coming to this space as well, is, we're focusing on what are the technologies, what are the opportunities to help people, seize innovation, entrepreneurship, financial empowerment. And a lot of what we're seeing in this space is how can we help ensure that among even broader people as well, so they can achieve their American dream.
Hi all, so thank you for that, Catherine. Yeah, no, it's great to be here. NFT risks, rewards, pitfalls, it's an area in the crypto space which isn't addressed too well, in my opinion. So by way of introduction, my name's Paul. I'm the co-founder of Antisoft. We're a cybersecurity company focusing heavily on Web3, working with a lot of fintech, crypto exchanges, decentralized exchanges. We've been in the space since 2016. And we've seen quite a lot around sort of the scams in the ICO space, smart contract hacks, fake websites, you name it, and now we've got NFTs. So it's interesting times, but it's an area that needs a lot more conversation and a lot more awareness.
So
Absolutely.
What are the risks?
Name them all.
Where do I start? Realistically, I'd need hours to discuss this, but in terms of cybersecurity, technology is just advancing rapidly at the moment. We got one side, we've got tech, we've got regulation, and then we've got a lot of investment coming in. And that's a reward pot for cyber criminals. You go to traditional businesses, it's more about information data leakage. But when it comes to the Web3 world, we've got real money at stake. So cyber criminals are making millions, or if not billions, yearly.
So when you're looking at that and you're advising companies and folks who are starting different projects, how do you frame it for them in terms of what are the biggest things you think, hey, let's get this protection in place, or what do we need to be thinking about, you think?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So cyber's quite broad. And if we look at the Web3 world, the focus is heavy on smart contract audits. Been around US, so this is my first trip to the US in like 20 years or something, so it's pretty exciting. But a lot of the conversation, and it's not just in the US, but across the globe in the crypto space, it's all about audits, and it's like, let's do a smart contract audit. But there's more to tech than just a smart contract, right? You've got the people side of things, you've got your whole technology stack, you've got your networks, nodes, you've got your front-end web UI, etc. So it's having awareness of the broader picture rather than just a small silo aspect. So yeah.
Yeah, there's really a lot when you're doing almost any crypto transaction. Still, it's so early, and it really feels a lot like hacking in some regards. Many of the dots have not been connected. It's not just sort of formware, click here and you're done. You've got to move money to this account, buy that currency, trade that currency with the other currency to get the third currency. So there's really a lot of, breaks in the chain where a cyber criminal could exploit. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it's very technical, right? Like you've got addresses with all these weird numbers and characters, and for an everyday user, it's like, oh, this is pretty exciting. How do I, like everyone's making money, how do I jump in? How can I quickly get some NFTs? How do I not miss out? So it's a space where it's driven by fear as well of missing out, FOMO. You got all these other little aspects of complexities. You've got a lot of money being raised very quickly. You got social media channels like Discord, Telegram, etc., which just open up consumers. You can have 200,000 people in a Telegram group, and anyone can be in that group. Anyone can target an individual in that group. So, yeah, it's about awareness, right? I think that's awareness and education, but that will come with time. We're very early in this ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I think, further to that point about awareness, we all have blind spots, right? And the thing about blind spots is you often don't know that you have them by definition. So building the right team, especially in a place that is changing so quickly, like having folks, have, Paul's expertise and everyone, everyone's here, like the legal, the security, and having your team around almost like a, even if it's in an early stage project, it's like an informal board of advisors, so to speak, to look at what, maybe you're not seeing, where these vulnerabilities may be, right? And making sure, okay, what are there other, things we can look at? I mean, even from a legal perspective, as you're looking at setting up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as you're talking to companies and projects, but as you're setting up a project, the legal analysis, let's say you do the right thing, you get your lawyer, legal analysis is going to change over time. Even if the laws don't change, because, and they will, as you pointed out before, they will change. We're in a really exciting time. But even as your product evolves, maybe some assessments, for example, if a token is a security, which I know a lot of people are focused on, that may look different in the early stage of your project versus in a later stage, depending on what the development has been. So continuing to have that support system around you to make sure that your blind spots are covered and that you're all tackling these issues.
Yeah, I would actually say that the amorphousness is a huge problem. Absolutely. The amorphousness of the law, the lack of existence of law covering the area. We often get we get a lot of technology people who are asking us questions, and we're helping them to form NFT projects and token offerings. We've done quite a lot of token offerings and company formations here and abroad in all of the crypto-friendly jurisdictions. And now we're doing a lot of DAO work. And I'm just going to use the DAOs as an example of the lack of law. I mean, you've got a DAO legislation in Wyoming, Colorado, and the Marshall Islands, and that's pretty much it. And the one in the Marshall Islands we helped to create, the opportunities, we talked about the opportunities. Basically one of my clients was advising the Marshall Islands on their law and suggested to them, hey, this might be an opportunity for you to create a DAO law. So they did. If you look at the Wyoming law, it's kind of hacky. It's sort of like, all right, let's get this thing going right now. And now it's going to evolve. And technology people usually ask the question, is it legal or not? We don't know. Maybe. All of the classic lawyer answers, because we don't really know if it's legal or not. We are really making it up as we go. We're trying to apply other areas of law. We're trying to see how the FinCEN rules work with regard to NFTs, trying to see how to apply securities laws. And it's really an exciting area in that regard, but also a scary area. If you are being chased by the IRS, for example, it's a criminal thing. You could go to jail. So it's really kind of a frightening thing. And many think it shouldn't be, because the IRS's approach to this has been so haphazard and so undefined. Like at one point it was you have to report every single crypto trade that you've done, which, you know, to anybody who trades crypto seems like a completely ridiculous ask. And, you know, or the whole other side of the spectrum is give to Caesar what Caesar is due. You know, report when you translate it into US dollars, and then that's what you owe in taxes. But back to the Marshall Islands, it's just fascinating how huge the opportunities are right now for all of you. Because this client just sort of suggested that they do it. They did it. The client set up a kind of a side hustle business of, oh, well, we had to set up our DAO in the Marshall Islands. It was kind of hard. We'll set up this business that helps people set their DAO up. So they stood up an LLC and started helping people set up their DAO. Well, guess what? The Marshall Islands came back to them and said, you should have the government contract to set up all DAOs in the Marshall Islands. So, you know, and that's one country. I think at this moment that, you know, there's other countries, Malta, for example, that has crypto regulation, 3 crypto laws, almost like an SEC for a set of securities laws and an SEC for crypto, and a decentralized corporation, which you might think of as a DAO law. Before people were talking about it as DAOs. So there's only a few countries. What about all the rest of the countries? All those opportunities are still open.
Absolutely, great point. And I think, and just to build on that too, there is an amorphous and kind of, ever-changing area, but the existing laws still do apply as well, right? And how is fraud? How is wire fraud? How are, we saw with OpenSea, we've seen some other situations where they are applying. Those laws still apply, even if we are in the quote-unquote Wild West, as people like to say, and we're early on. So it's going to be interesting to see how people, so you need to have a look at how those laws may apply. Gambling laws is another one where you need to really need to look at those in terms of depending on your project. So having the awareness going in so you can structure intentionally and take advantage of, and having awareness of developments like in these other ones, that may come, and you may want to pivot, you may want to take advantage of them. But yeah, so looking at the security landscape, what is it that you see in the next 6 months that you're really focused on in terms of priority? Or that's really going to be in focus?
That's a good question. No, so as a business, we get requests daily for various types of things and turning projects around within 24, 48 hours, or looking into exploits that have happened, etc. But I guess as a business, we focus heavily on things around exploiting smart contracts, so above and beyond just doing basic audits. But I think for us, it's educating more than just the audit space. It's looking into penetration testing around web UI, your network, your infrastructure, et cetera. So as a business, we're targeting this space quite heavily. We've been working with exchanges since 2016, got into the ICO space in 2017, and that was quite interesting. And the NFT space kind of correlates with the types of scams and hacks that are happening now, but just sort of in a different way. There was sort of that rush towards let's launch projects, let's get tokens out, let's get investment. We've got all these consumers who are wanting to invest, but there's so many scammers who are taking advantage of that. NFT space, once again, it's happening quite a bit, but you've got to a stage where you've got cyber criminals dropping NFTs to drain wallets. So it's just being aware of the types of attacks and how you could potentially be exploited. So yeah, you do need to do a lot of diligence around connecting your wallets, what link are you clicking on, who's running this airdrop, who's the team behind it, do they have legal, have they looked into legal risk compliance side of things. So it's, once again, it's a bit of a wave. I think we'll be out of it soon and things will mature up, but regulation will drive that as well, but typically it's technology which is driving regulation. So
yeah, it's interesting when you speak about regulation and waves. You saw in the like if you go back a few years, you saw in the ICO craze and the precedent to the ICO craze, very much the same thing you saw in NFTs in the last 2 years. A bunch of new projects forming, very little guidance from the governments. And I said governments in the plural, and then what might have looked like a crackdown. And if you want to use the past to predict the future, That was about 5 years for the ICOs, and we're in about year 3 with NFTs. So you can sort of predict that, maybe the government is going to take a look at these things, and all of the things that we've sort of said, oh, we can do that, and we don't have to worry about it because nobody's looking. Well, maybe they are. Maybe they're just kind of waiting to figure out how they're going to approach it. With ICOs, the way they approached it is to send out a request for information. You would get a letter from the SEC requesting information, and it was super scary. Turns out they didn't actually act on all of those requests. There's only 4,000 employees. They're not going to act on all of the requests. In NFTs, you should probably see something similar, but what's interesting is that it's not just going to be the SEC.
Absolutely. And I think, too, in terms of trying to protect, it sounds like, yes, you have to identify the risk first and foremost, but then, especially at this point, have a plan when things do go wrong, right? Have what happens when you click on the wrong link? What happens if your business gets penetrated, right? Having that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Like, in terms of fundamentals, I think they're very similar to any business, right? But it's just sort of, from a cybersecurity point of view, it's the threat vectors and sort of the attack vectors that you need to be aware of. So they're things that differ. But end of the day, you just got to have the basics in place, which I think the drive is, the focus is more about let's release a product, get out there, otherwise we're going to miss the wave.
So I have a question for both of you, as you've both mentioned the international space. What are you guys seeing in other countries that you think we need to be looking at here in the United States? Are there things that really interesting developed? You've mentioned a few in the Marshall Islands and some in Malta and whatnot, but
do
what do
you
you
mean that we should adopt as good practice, as best practices, or that we should be aware of as risks?
I would say either way. I was thinking more on the positive as regulation is being developed, as we're having this conversation, because I think as an industry, it's important that everyone here who has the expertise and is deep in it is informing the development of the regulation to the extent possible, right? Because you want it to work. So what conversations are y'all seeing happen overseas that you think we should be having more of here?
Well, I think I can answer that question pretty briefly. We've been underscoring all day today, get involved in the government process. The government meaning the legislative government, does not understand this. If you went back to the music rights days, they didn't even understand that. How the hell are they going to understand this? This is really hard stuff. It took you a long time to learn it. They don't have time. They have their own other, things. That's the other thing. Crypto people often will approach the, Congress thinking that they're important. We're not that important to Congress. There's a lot of things that are more important than us, and they don't have time to think about it. So the more you get involved, the more you inform your congressperson and, try to sort of say the way you'd like to see it happen, the more likely it will happen that way. And if you don't get involved, it'll happen the way you don't want it to happen.
Really good point.
Yeah. No, so I guess I can base it more on sort of what I'm seeing in Australia and Asia, because that is sort of our focus area. And being here, being in the US, sort of opens up a lot more exposure and understanding of what's happening here. But in Australia, we're seeing a lot of drive. We've got member bodies, so we've got something called Blockchain Australia, which sort of brings the ecosystem together, creates a voice for the communities and for that whole sort of member base, but also provides a platform for a lot of the crypto Web3 companies to have that conversation with government and the regulators, et cetera. So there is a huge push, but that in return sort of educates a lot of sort of the government regulators, et cetera, because to be honest, they've got very little understanding of what this tech is doing and where it's heading. So there needs to be sort of that covering that gap, right? So yeah, which is a good way to do it. So it's I quite like that approach. But yeah, I think that's something which I know Singapore does quite heavily as well with MAS, and there's a number of member bodies. But yeah, I'd be keen. Is there much happening here in the States?
It's funny that the second half of the consideration for best practices is how is our government approaching this? How are we approaching this? And you asked the question, how do other governments approach it? Well, other governments approach it as a competitive thing. How do we get these new companies to come to our country? Portugal, for example, offering incentives to get companies to come in. In our case, we're scaring people away because we're messing it up. You know, we used to be the place where brain drain came to, and now we're draining brains out of the U.S. because we are sort of so risk averse and so sort of tripping over our own regulations that we are missing the main point, which is that this is a whole new industry, a whole new economy, and it affects, you know, if you think of Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3, Web 3 is when the internet affects all the rest of the industries, not just communications and commerce. And so this is a really important juncture, and if we mess this up, we will really lose out big over the next 50 years.
But on an optimistic point, it's not too late. Having these conversations and having these conferences, you know, and having people having these conversations, I think, you know, we can, you know, have it be, well, first of all, help the industry globally. I think it's, you know, make it even stronger, but also help U.S. keep, you know, to your point, all, you know, the talent and the opportunity here as well.
Okay, so I always want to keep the community involved. Are there any questions? No questions. Okay.
Okay. Well, is there anything that y'all think we haven't covered that we should say, or that you need to cover, that y'all, top of your mind?
I just think there should be more awareness around the cybersecurity side of things in this space, which then creates more of a positive impact on the whole ecosystem. Sort of every hack, like, there's billions being lost, and sort of the numbers out there just don't do any justice in terms of what's really happening. So I think in terms of having awareness, whether it be regulation, whether it be risk, whether it be cyber, I think creates a more positive environment, which leads to more adoption and growth in the industry.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's why a lot of, you know, sort of crypto OGs will group together to bring down the scamster, the fraudsters, because the fraudsters really do hurt the whole market.
And I think that point is absolutely critical. We do need to help, you know, help us help the, you know, everyone else help the space itself mature and do the right thing and have the right approach to this.
And one other point is just, you know, transparency. When you're starting your projects, again, nobody knows the right way. The government doesn't know the right way. The agencies don't know the right way. Your lawyer doesn't know the right way. So be transparent and keep open communication.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Like, I think one of the things is we're so early in this sort of journey. There's going to be failures, right? And we'll learn from those. So as long as you're not making those failures again, it's like a startup, right? As long as you're getting better and not repeating the same offense, the industry will thrive and grow. So yeah,
That's exactly
Absolutely.
right. You know, don't be afraid to fail. Don't try to hide it. You know, say, look, we tried this, and this is what happened, and now we're trying something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you
This is
all.
really wonderful, beautiful talk. Thank you.